Node.js Foundation Build Working Group meeting of April 26th. Present we have myself, Alexis Campiza, Hans Christian Flatten, Johan Bergstrom, Michael Dawson, and Miles Florence. So as usual, we will start by getting to a quick stand-up. I will try to take notes, and if anybody else wants to help, that would be great. So the order of the document, okay, I'm first. So I've done a bit of work related to build, trying to run Canary in the Gold Mine on Windows. Well, the objective was to see how Windows fares and also to figure out what it would take to get supporting CI for Windows runs. So the first part, the compatibility is work in progress. I mean, it doesn't look too bad, but what I figured out is that Canary in the Gold Mine only provides success versus fail for the whole module. It doesn't actually give you a breakdown of what tests fail for whatever reason. So then I assume we need to add support for flaky modules, which Canary in the Gold Mine already has, in order to specify, okay, this module is known to fail on Windows, so we don't block the release because of it. And but Miles was telling me that the support is not, it's global, is not per platform. So that's something that we're going to look at adding.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I talked to him about before, because similarly for Power and for other platforms, that would be very useful for us.
It's that was a priority for us. So as soon as we get to it, we're happy to make these changes if you guys don't get to it first.
Yeah, that's on my radar for this week.
Awesome. And other than that, I haven't been too active in build. Most of the work in my team has been done by Joao, who's not here today, and it's been doing some work in cross compilation for ICU, so that's now working in CI, and also for testing ARM v7 binaries on the Pi 2 and Pi 3s. That's also my stand-up. Next is Hans.
Yeah, I haven't done too much build related recently. Next is Johan.
Okay, not too much, to be honest, but a few things at least. I refactored the FreeBSD scripts for the linters and our bots to improve the resiliency for restarting and monitoring. I saw that there was a slight issue with regards to that. I've been working on like improving the parallel job running situation, both on the build repo and the Node.js repo. We landed a few commits in Node.js that now lives in 4, 5, and 6 branches, which is excellent. And what it essentially does is that we pass an environment variable if it exists on the build host, so we can run tests and linting in parallel. I'm looking at making that apply to make as well, but it's most often irrelevant seeing how we use Ccache for most stuff. I removed the pub key stuff we've been having in our Ansible scripts for a good while now, which essentially pulled GitHub keys from GitHub and put it into authorized keys on the slave. The rationale here being that we moved to the shared test release infra benchmark and so on keys that are available through the shared secrets. So the way to add users now is by delegating them with the GPG keys to the secrets repo. I did some minor refactoring of the Nginx config. There's been a few pull requests I've merged with regards to improving some other stuff in Nginx, and while doing so, I did some SSL refactoring. I haven't landed that yet, but it's due very soon. There's also a few other Nginx config changes from the Node.js org team I need to merge, but I'm looking at that and have been reviewing it. It's just one of those things you want to test pretty well before you put it in production, since it affects so much. I've also spent some more time with OS X. Well, I guess we'll talk about it later, but I just want to know what options we have. I've been working somewhat with the GitHub bot team, which is a relatively new group of people working to create a bot that does all kinds of work on PRs and issues in the Node.js repo, but hopefully also has the ambition to grow more functionality, integration with Jenkins and so on. So I'm very interested in that, and I'm very glad to see it happen, seeing how the build group has done a bit of tooling but never really come to anything working when it comes to integrating GitHub and Jenkins. So that's great for us, and hopefully we'll get something going soon. And finally, we've had some issues with 2 release slaves, actually 3 now, that has run out of RAM, which is pretty weird because I've never seen it prior. But what I did was just essentially slap on 4 gigs of swap on each slave. So I need to put that into Ansible. And as late as this morning, we also ran into issues with another build slave, release build slave, that was a result of Jenkins. I'm not sure what to do about that. It doesn't happen very often, but it's just one thing we need to think about long term, hopefully. Well, by hopefully I mean that long term someone else will solve it for us, but we just need to have an eye open for slaves that they're flagged out as offline, but they're online, and you need to force a disconnect and wait a grace time for it to work. It's really tricky, but yeah, that was the reason that the release job was holding up this morning. That's me. So next up is Michael.
Okay, so it's been a while, I think, since we met. So I did the work to add the Linux for machine, and it's looking good to know that. I also moved over our PPC Canadian machines to Ubuntu for testing and release.
Michael, your voice is coming in and out. Is it just me?
I'll try and talk closer to the laptop. So I was also moving the PPC Big Endian machines over to Ubuntu from Fedora so that we can use them in the releases, and the other related work with that. V8 testing in the node tree, so have the initial jobs up and running once a night, and investigating a couple of issues that we've seen out of those. The first ones being on power, where there were some tests we knew were going to fail, so I've excluded those. And finally, did spend a little bit of time creating some new libv test jobs along the way. And then next is Miles.
Hi, just give me 1 second because I'm fixing the changelog on master right now.
And we can skip you and go to Rich in the meantime.
And I'm good. So yeah, like release stuff. I was doing some discussions last night about how to speed up Canary in the Gold Mine by doing some aggressive caching and not doing as much grabbing online resources. I'm going to be looking into seeing if we could do some of that this week. And then I also want to get a few of those features in that will help support various platforms, specifically making flaky modules specific to platforms, and also being able to set up modules to be skipped on particular platforms. I think it will be also useful to look at doing this for particular versions, because we're going to have modules that are flaky on different versions. So just looking into how to implement that, and hopefully have something by the end of the week for that.
So will it be a possibility to version that with the source tree, or you don't download the node sources when you're on Canary in the Gold Mine?
Canary in the Gold Mine builds off of the node sources.
Okay, so you could, well, for example, for a normal regression test, we have the status files that are versioned with each branch, right? The version with node. So each branch can have its own version of what's flaky and what's not.
Yes. So I think the big thing will be just Canary in the Gold Mine itself is not aware of the version it's running in, but the CI is able to build. So there's kind of like 2 different systems going on there. And I just need to make the CI utility itself aware of it.
Okay.
Well, I guess it's like for the regular test, they're built as part of the runtime, so we just have a configuration. So I think what Alexis was suggesting, could we have the configuration of what modules are good or not as part of the node tree?
Right, but you work with the node binary, not with the node sources, right?
Yeah.
But if you work with the node sources, you could theoretically put the versioning in there.
So yeah, so I mean, like, there's no reason why we can't just get the version from process.version. Like, specifically what I need to figure out is, like, we have the lookup table with all the metadata, and I want to be able to have it, like, explicitly in the metadata there, like, what is supported and what isn't supported for particular modules.
Yeah, that makes sense as well.
Yeah, okay. So it'll be part of the CITGM, the existing configuration files.
Yeah, exactly. It will be completely encapsulated in there. And then that would make it, like, really easy, for example, to update that as things change without having to ever touch CI or really, touch anything else other than the canary and the goldmine source.
Yeah, makes sense.
Great. Is that it for your stand-up, Miles?
Yeah, I think that's it for me right now.
Okay, then the next one is Rich.
I don't have anything specifically related to build, I don't think, unless somebody wants to remind me of something I should be talking about. Yeah, I've been doing a bunch of things, but nothing specific to build, so I'm just going to stop talking now.
All right. So that was it for the stand-up. We can go into the agenda. The first issue on the agenda was access to build resources for people outside the build group. Strawman for discussion. Issue number 354. This was proposed by Michael. Michael, do you want to tell us where it's at?
Out of one of the earlier meetings, I'd taken the action to create that straw man. And I just added it in because I don't think we've had any comments or discussion in the issue itself. So more of a reminder, and maybe if we have time, we could spend some time talking about what's there.
Right. Yeah, I got a chance to review it just before the meeting, and it seems generally okay to me. So you divided the access in ongoing access. Would this be done by giving access to the shared keys, credentials in the secret repo?
I think that for ongoing access, that makes sense, yeah.
And so it would be permanent. There's no way to expire that access.
Actually, I'm going to pull up the issue to see what I had in mind in that case. 354, right?
Yep.
Sorry, just opening it up. It's been a while myself, to be honest. Okay. So I'm just trying to get a good view here now.
The way I interpret it is that it's intended to get permanent access through the secrets, the shared pub keys. Yes.
Right. So like the rest of the build working group.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the shared repo, not even all of the build members, I think, have access to the test key. So we need to organize that as well.
So in that case, there is no way to expire the access other than changing the secret everywhere, right?
That's correct.
So once you give this access, it will be permanent.
Yeah, we'll have to re-roll the keys. Yes.
I guess it's as permanent as any of us have access in terms of our access being permanent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's sort of the difference between it's ongoing versus, temporary. It's like, well, they're gonna need to do this, going forward, and therefore we'll decide to trust them as we would trust this group.
Right, so the bar is quite a bit higher for the permanent access, even though we separated the release machines, and so we can afford to be a little less paranoid even about access to these machines.
Yes.
And I mean, there's also, if you look at why people want access, I mean, from the build group's perspective, it's it's more infra. I mean, is it down? Is it up? Do we need to do an update? That kind of stuff. And from outside, it's more like, hey, I have problems with the PPCLE build. Is there anything, can I get access to try things out? And I just don't see like permanent access for testing purposes being relevant. And if we look at how the build group is moving and growing or shrinking, it's pretty constant. So yeah, I guess there's no real conclusion, just more insight.
Yeah, I guess the other alternative would be to say we're willing to give ongoing access, but in a they can log in and they have their own user account, but not necessarily through the shared key. I mean, that would be more restricted. I think that wouldn't cover all the cases, but that could be another class of ongoing access but restricted versus ongoing access to root access on the machine, which is effectively what the shared key gives you.
How is that different from the temporary access that you suggest in the pull request? Is that the same?
I think the difference would be is that we would create that and just leave it, expect it to stay there. Now, in terms of the temporary access rate.
Yeah, in the temporary access, you were suggesting removing the machine from the build farm and re-imaging afterwards.
Right. I think that was part of what we discussed, right? That we need, if they weren't collaborators, I think it was like if they weren't collaborators, we would do those things. If they were collaborators, we would just give them the temporary access and then remove it afterwards, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Will we also have to delete any Jenkins secrets on the machine?
What kind of secrets are you referring to?
Well, in the Jenkins startup script, there's a secret. That
you mean to identify the slave?
Yeah.
I don't think that's an issue per se, seeing how each slave needs not necessarily an IP secret match, but it's limited. What IPs can access the Jenkins master is limited. So like even if you have the secret key, you wouldn't necessarily be able to emulate a slave.
No, but you would be able to reconnect that particular slave. Whereas we're saying we want to take it off the infrastructure, right?
Oh yeah, you mean and the bigger problem there, I guess, is that we don't have a user account for that person, meaning that they're root and they could pretty much do what they want on the slave.
Well, except I think for the temporary access, we basically said if they're collaborators, we can give them access without taking it out of the farm and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, if you're really discussing giving access to someone we don't, that's not a collaborator or that just newly joined or whatever, I think the easiest way would be just deploying a new slave. It's pretty quick, we have good scripts for it, and it just takes, 5-10 minutes if even. But that use case, if at least if I look at the track record, I think I'm the one probably giving out most access, which it doesn't happen very often either, like once a month. And it's most often, collaborators that's been around for a year, and they need access to a specific machine, and I have a text I tell them, don't install packages, or if you need to do anything, you tell me, or stuff like that. I temporarily add their pub key to the slave.
Yeah.
And then tell me when it's done, and then I revoke it and also reconnect it to Jenkins. If we don't have redundancy for that type of slave, I just say have a look at the Jenkins and don't try to make it suffer too much. But it's just try to be nice and build it on trust. So if we need another level, I think just redeploying or deploying a new slave would be the best alternative.
Right. So I think that's along the line. That's along the lines of what I've done in the past too. They've mostly been somebody that I know who needs access to an AIX machine to investigate an issue or something like that. I think we're saying, like, what's written down here basically says collaborators, we just give them further access. And then if the considerations for ongoing access are satisfied, so, you know, they meet the things that are listed there in terms of, you know, well, okay, if they're a collaborator, we've already decided. If they're not a collaborator, you know, have they been involved in the working group such that we know them, or the, you know, the Node.js community group, that we know who they are and trust them? Or, as I think, you know, other people have mentioned before, if we know that they work for a company and so we know there's consequences to them if they misbehave. You know, or there's other collaborators who will vouch for them, then in that case we would also say, okay, we're going to give them access temporarily. And in the cases where they don't meet that bar, like they're really somebody that is new to the community, we don't know them that well, in that case we would actually disconnect it and, you know, read it afterwards.
Right. Yeah, I think I like the criteria that you've written down for establishing trust.
Right.
And if somebody is a trusted collaborator, then we could give them ongoing access if they have a need for ongoing access, or just specific access if they need a one-time access. But in that case, we could trust them and re-add the machine back to Jenkins, like Johan was saying.
So we'll only take the extreme case of re-imaging and disconnecting and all that in cases where we really think, you know, there's not enough trust built up there. Otherwise, we'll do pretty much what, you know, Johan has described and what I've also done in the past.
Yeah, I guess the question here is, I mean, if this is ongoing and happening, we should make a list. First of all, we should have an audit log. We should just add a log somewhere, check it into the build repo, where we just say user X gave user Y access to this machine between X and Y, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I guess also the second question is, like, who do we need to keep check of who are allowed to delegate access?
I think it's like, yeah, so in agreement, I've got the last thing that says basically we need to record this. I think, let's see, what did I say here in terms of what you need to do it? So, yeah, I did write something on that particular.
I would assume that the people who have ongoing access also have the privilege to delegate access. But yeah, it's an interesting clarification.
Yeah, I think I had written in here somewhere that we needed a Control F. Because I thought I'd written somewhere like we needed an LGTM from somebody else or something. Why can't I find that?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it says if considerations listed for ongoing access are satisfied, access can be granted after discussion in an issue on the repo after one additional LGTM from a build team member. So one build team member raises it, the second one approves.
I think that looks fine. I think you should also apply to the ongoing access, right? Any type of access should be reviewed anyway.
Agreed. So we could, yeah. Yeah, it says the build team will review such requests to an issue on the repo. Once agreed, the individual will be granted access to the secret repo. So I think it was just in the one case I called out you need at least two people, and the other one it just said review, but I could mirror that if that's what we think makes sense.
Yep. Okay. I think we could probably take this back to GitHub.
Okay. So yeah, if any, any more comments, otherwise, I'll take another look in a few days and see if we're consensus and try and move forward.
Yeah, I'll try and give you some feedback. And yeah, it's awfully quiet in there.
I think we're all sort of on the same wavelength. We just need to wordsmith what's left.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So let's move on to the next issue. This is a big one. Issue number 367, OSX Build Boss CI Call to Action. Johan, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. I'll try to keep it short. So the problem is that, well, it's growing kind of, but the gist is we don't have enough testing on OS X. And the current platform we're testing on, which is on Voxer, which previously also gave us FreeBSD testing, they've pretty much told us that you should look at moving elsewhere. So this puts us in a situation where we might not have release or testing on OS X shortly, and it also puts us in a situation where we can't really answer to questions that, for instance, recently happened in Node.js, where where V8 just dropped support for 5.6 or 10.6 and 10.7. And we don't know, like, how do we act, because we're not testing on 7, 8, 9, or 11. We're just testing on 10.10. So the state of OS X is unfortunately pretty dire. I've looked at options in terms of hosting. Obviously, the best state would be someone, company stepping up and saying, hey, we care about releases on OS X, and we're happy to chip in. But I've also looked at commercial services online in case we need to spend some of the money we have. I guess the problem is that we just don't have enough people that care enough about this to push it forward. But I think the current state is documented pretty well.
Do we know anybody at Apple? I wonder if trying to ask if they care, if they want to help.
I have a few ways in locally here in Sydney. I've probed, asked for hardware they lay off, stuff like that. I have a Mac Mini, but yeah, nothing else, not enough, from my point of view.
I think Michael was asking if anybody from Apple, the company.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
So I know the Apple HQ here, and I know a few people here at Apple in Sydney, and I just said that the discussion with them hasn't gone through as much as I wanted to. So that's at least what I've tried from Apple's point of view.
So in terms of a hosting provider like Mac Stadium, you listed this, that they provide a wide range of OS X versions and managed hosting, but it's more expensive, and you estimated $800 per month per OS X version, or?
That's all in all. I mean, the problem is twofold. We don't have enough hardware, and then the tricky part is that once you have the hardware, you need to find the software. Apple won't provide you with any other versions than current or prior. So 10, 6, 7, 8, 9, if we are interested, we have to find ourselves, dig up an old USB or something like that. And that's the good part about at least Mac Stadium. It gives us the option of choosing older operating systems.
So you say that with $800 per month, we could support the matrix that then you list below?
Roughly, yes. It might be a bit squeezed, so we would have to compromise on 10.6, I think, but otherwise we should be fine.
That looks pretty cheap. For 6 OS versions, 2 machines each, that's 12 virtual machines.
Yeah, so it's roughly 2 gig each. What we're getting is 3 Mac Minis, and then we get virtualized on top.
Right, my take is that if we had to set up our own machines or co-locations, just the time to manage it ourselves and the possible impact on collaborators would make it worth our while if the cost of hosting is $800 per month.
No, I totally agree.
In terms of exhausting all possible avenues, though, I mean, what else can we do to see if anybody else out there is interested in stepping up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could check with other teams in Node.js. Like if we have anything that's closer to marketing, it's It's a bit unfortunate. I mean, I really want to see a company step in here that uses Node on OS X a lot. I think developers in general does, but it'd be great to get company support and hopefully improve the state of the build group by having more businesses being interested in the development of Node.js.
Should we try to give more visibility to this issue that's now in the build repo, or maybe post an issue in the main repo or the roadmap repo? I don't know if maybe people are watching that. Probably the main repo would have more visibility.
Yeah, I can try and write something a bit less specific. Now, I mean, obviously, my findings in terms of options might be a bit limited to Mac Stadium, whereas I think something more generic would probably be beneficial if someone wants to provide hardware or similar. So so if you're suggesting that I'd create an issue in the Node repo, I'm happy to do so. Yeah,
my suggestion was to open an issue just to link to this, but to give more visibility to the issue. Maybe somebody will respond, just as a last resort before we move forward with paying for it with the foundation fund.
And the key issue seems to be somebody, it's providing those different OS levels, which is definitely the hard part.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, do we need to test on all those 6 versions? Or can we get by with fewer additions and possibly add more redundancy?
Yeah, that's. I mean, we just Node.js 6 will drop 7 and 8, but the problem is that we still haven't defined what we support for 0, 10, 12, 4, 5. It's undefined. So before I think from a build group perspective, before we come forth with a recommendation, this is what we should support officially. We at least need to test, which we don't at the moment. So it's a bit of chicken egg situation. But I like whenever Node.js repo asks us, what do you think we should do in this regard? It's hard to give them a satisfactory reply because we just don't know.
Right. I'm no OS X expert, but I was wondering if between 10.7 and 10.8 is the difference significant enough or small enough that we can just test on 7, test on the lowest version that we plan to support, and the 2 more recent ones, for example.
Yeah, we could do that. I mean, I know the big one was 10.5 to 6 when they switched to the LLVM tool chain, and moving forward, it's obviously just improving. So I'm happy to revise the list if that helps. Absolutely. It's just that we, as a build group, I think we need to kind of say this is what we recommend, and if it's 10.7 or even 10.8, that's all good for me. I'm no expert in OS X either.
Do we have any OS X experts in the group?
I don't know if I call myself an OS X expert, but it's the primary system that I use.
Okay, that's the best we've got.
I mean, 10.7 is the earliest, though, right? Because it's already been dropped from support for from V8, like 10.6 and before.
But probably not on the version of V8 that's in LTS.
Didn't they? I'm pretty sure they just dropped 7 and 8 for V8 5.0.
Yeah, so we just bumped the minimum OS X version in V6. That was like one of the polls that came in at the end. Let me just verify exactly what number it is. So we've bumped the Mac OS X development target to 10.7 as a minimum target. I believe that V8.5 has dropped support for 7 and 8 because they no longer are receiving security updates from Apple at all. I believe in the end, the decision was to not drop official support for the older versions, but to be explicit about the fact that anything lower than I think 10.9 wouldn't be like officially supported, but that we would kind of do the best that we could.
Yeah.
We're talking about V6 or LTS as well?
LTS is still undefined. So the build target is 10.5. So 10.5 is the lowest barrier. I think we should do 10.6. We've been talking about that prior. But yeah.
Well, we could also pose the question to the LTS working group, see if they have any input.
Sure.
On this one.
I think we've got half of the active LTS working group in this meeting right now, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Michael, do you have any particular thoughts on that?
I know that, like, from our IBM builds, we've only been supporting 10.8 above, so that doesn't really help with the lower level ones. I guess the key thing for the LTS is, like, do people actually use it for production? Like, is OSX in production, and that's where, the LTS support is intended. If it's people using it on their laptops, it's pretty hard to not be on a later level, is what I understand.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's the key. Go ahead.
So if we wanted to be aggressive about it, then we could propose to follow what V6 did and drop 0.7 and 0.8 and support minimum 0.9 and open an issue in an LTS and see if anybody screams about it. And if not, go with that.
I think the one thing that we could see being problematic is I could imagine many people working at companies who are potentially on pegged versions of OS X who are using LTS because they want more stable versions even for their local systems. So I can imagine, like as long as V8 is continuing to offer updates for those in the LTS version, it might be hard for us to drop explicit support.
Yeah, and also now that 6 is just out, I think checking the NVM repo, checking our repo, and checking Homebrew for issues with regards to deployment targets might be relevant. If there's like a lot of people saying, hey, I'm on 10.8 or whatever they're on, that might be a good indication for us to consider in terms of LTS.
Yeah, that's a good point.
One thing also that I think is we can do this incrementally, I think getting 10.10, 10.11, and 10.9 automated testing going should be the top priority, and then we can start handling the other ones like if it becomes necessary. There was like an issue that came up in the V6 release just before it came out saying that apparently a test was failing on 10.11. I usually don't update OS X until that thing's been out. Like usually I'm always staying one release behind. But these are things we would have caught had we been automating the tests for them.
Yeah, we're currently testing only on 10.10, so already adding 10.9 would be a step forward.
Do you think that the project? Do you think we could make a more open call on the blog or somewhere to just see if there's any other institutions that may have hardware that they can donate to us to replace what we're doing right now?
So do we actually want hardware? Like, the issue I see is somebody could give us a whole pile of Macs, doesn't mean we can necessarily get 10.7.
Yeah, I think just finding that company that actually uses OS X, deeply cares about it, and different versions of Node and OS X would be a good fit. I mean, then I'm happy to do hardware because they would likely have all the resources available to us. Otherwise, it can get tricky, because we're not going to find the software.
Right. It kind of needs to be not just give us hardware, it's like give us hardware with the versions, these different versions, right? Is that the key ask?
Right, we could try to reach out to Michael and see if if we could put an article out on the blog as a call for help on the hosting issue. And in terms of version support, I mean, what we suggest starting with .10 and .11 sounds good, but we could also broaden the issue to at least the collaborators and see if they have any further opinion. Maybe there are more OSX users who have an opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like doing those two things would be a good sort of next step, but I wouldn't want to wait too long. You know, it'd probably be good to wait weeks rather than months in terms of if that doesn't pan out, then trying to see if we can actually just go to get hosted service.
Yes. Well, to be honest, personally, at $800 per month, I like the option of hosting and paying for it, right?
Yeah. And it's flexible in terms of when, you know, you want to move up, you can move some of the resources from the lower ones to the higher ones. But I think, you know, I think it's worth the last attempt to see if we can find that company, like Johan's mentioning, who would really be a good partner. Otherwise, this seems like a very attractive way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should try and make an attempt and make it more visible, and then you see where we go.
Yeah, if there's no response?
Yeah, then we go back and just do this. I think, I mean, I think I've been bringing this up for more than 6 months, so we shouldn't forget that if worst comes to worst and the stuff at Voxer starts dying, we're not going to have any releases either. So
Right. That's why I'm kind of like, you know, I'm like, yeah, let's make the last attempt, but can we set ourselves, you know, do we think 2 weeks is reasonable to be able to, you know, make a call on whether we think there's going to be a response or not, or what's, if that's not the right time, what is the right time? Because I think it's been, like you said, 6 months. We don't want to stretch out for another 6 months. We want to address the risk.
Right.
yeah.
I would say if we post it tomorrow, then by the time we have the next meeting, we could decide to move forward with the hosting.
Yeah. I just want to, I think like if I'm the only guy pushing this, I don't think visibility will be that great. So if you know, if there was a working group that knows how to amplify this, or if there are channels we have that might make it more visible, that'd be preferable.
I'm going to likely see Michael Rogers tonight. I can bring this up to him in person, and I'm more than happy to help step in to just kind of, you know, be a voice of consistency and getting the message out there.
Yeah. I could also tag this for a TSC agenda. I think it's somewhat within their scope.
Yeah, that would, you're right, would be, you know, that would have, if you weren't going to talk, if Miles wasn't going to talk to Michael, that would be another way to just get everybody at that level in the loop.
Yeah, I think it would end up there ultimately anyway, because a decision with regards to money has to be made, right?
The one thing I do think is worth bringing up here, though, I know that Rod was pretty adamant about wanting to not take foundation money for this if possible, and to try to have it something like be something coming from the community. So I'd want to make sure that, you know, like Rod's not around right now, and I don't want this to be something that it seems like it's going around, you know, his wishes on.
No, I've spoken to him about that as well, and we've been doing some local work in Sydney, but we just haven't, you know, bear fruit yet. So, and I agree with him. I would really want to see this come from the community.
Right. So we're gonna give it one final try. So why don't Miles and I take an action item here? Miles, if you see Michael, you can talk to him, and then by Thursday you and I can sync up, and if nothing has happened, I will bring it up to the TSC.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Great. So 10:53 here. The next issue is accept terms of use for Linux One machines, issue number 386.
Yeah, I really just added this as a reminder. So Joel already sent me his email saying yes, he accepts, and it's just I need Johan and Rod to do the same.
I think I did.
Okay. I'll go back to my email, and if I don't find it, I'll send you an email just saying, hey, can you send it again? Otherwise, if I find it, sorry for losing it.
No, no worries. I just recall seeing it and just replying to it straight off.
Okay. It's possible that I've lost it in my mail. So I'll look again. If not, I'll just ping you and get you to send it to me again. And thanks.
Perfect.
Okay, so we can move on to the next one. The serial port daily test run in CI. So we did this work, Joe and I, based on an old request from the hardware working group. They said that the serial port project was having trouble testing the releases, especially on Windows, so we built this Jenkins job, and there's a machine donated by Microsoft, a physical machine with a serial port device, and so there's a job to test the master branch of serial port every day. And it's running now in the Node.js CI, and I just wanted to get feedback on whether that's the right place to do it, if it's okay to be part of the Node.js CI, or if we should create a separate master for it. The intent is to donate this to the serial port project so that they can have easier testing, and it currently only supports Windows.
I guess it's the physical machine that requires, like, to be able to test it, you need a physical machine, is why we can't easily do it for, like, the other Linuxes or anything.
Yes, I think it needs a serial port echo device for the test. So the serial port device is the special requirement for which we cannot use just any virtual machine.
Okay. When you say, is it like a whole device, or is it a device driver?
I'm not sure of the details, but I can certainly share them if anybody is interested in extending the support for the platforms.
I mean, because I'm just thinking if it's a device that we just would need to install in one of our virtual machines, that would be relatively straightforward. And I don't know, would anybody have objections to us installing that device on our virtual machines?
No.
So yeah, Alexis, if you want to send me the details, if it's, because if it's as simple as another package we install in Linux, I might take a look at that.
Yeah, I'll follow up and share the details. But in terms of having support for the serial port project in our CI, are there any objections for that?
Do they?
Where would
mean,
it be otherwise?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said that, like, if it's not connected to Jenkins, where would we put it otherwise? I feel like it belongs there. At least, I mean, the results of what it's doing is relevant. So I think it should be there.
Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be controversial, but I wanted to check with everybody before,
We're not giving any other access to Jenkins or anything. It's just that it's there and running, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, +1 as well for me.
Okay. I'll share the details on how to set up a serial port device. The last issue on our agenda is about naming of teams for CI support. This isn't extremely important, extremely critical, but I thought it would be a quick discussion and easier to have while we're on this meeting. A few times I've seen people mention Node.js CI as a way to report an issue with Jenkins, and specifically Node test pull request. And right now, that's a team that was devised around next-gen CI project, which hasn't had much traction, incidentally. And so I was wondering if what should be the right alias for people to report issues about CI. Should we keep it Node.js Build, or should we make it Node.js CI and ask the owners of the CI repo and team to rename themselves to CI&G?
Have there been a lot of issues misreported that way, or?
Not too many. Well, at least that I've seen. I've caught a couple of collaborators. Of course, we could just message, Node.js Build is the right alias.
Right. Yeah, we could basically try and tell people. Right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say. Okay, I was gonna say we could message it. We could move it like you suggest, if CI isn't that active, or we could, if there are some active people in CI, we might just ask them that when it does happen that they repost in build.
Mm-hmm. Well, in any case, we could message it better, right? By documenting it somewhere on the README, for example, or in the collaborator guide. So I guess the question is, Node.js Build the right alias for CI issues, or is Node.js Build a broader scope?
I think there's a point to be made about the distinction between the build group and we have a group called Jenkins admins at the moment, which, if you're in that group, you have admin access to both of our Jenkins environments, meaning you can do all changes, you can mess with slaves, and it's kind of implied that you have access to most machines as well. I can see how there might be a distinction to be made between them, but yeah, I don't really see a problem just calling everything build for now. And if it really grows and the build group is annoyed by being pinged too much, well, sure, we can split it off later.
Yeah, that seems like a good way forward to me. Like it build until it's a problem. Build seems like the right answer.
Okay, so then the action would be to open a pull request for the collaborators guide, I would say, and document this, and then leave the CI repo as is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sound good? Okay, I'll take that action. Okay, and that was the last issue on our agenda. We're 11:01 right on time. So is there anything else that you guys would like to discuss? No? Okay, so the meeting is over. Thank you very much for participating, and thanks for any viewers for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.